Hello and welcome to another episode of Wholly Unapologetic. My name is Marcus. I am here with my co-host Ace. Ace, you have brought a very special guest to us today. Would you like to introduce us?
Absolutely. So I met Erin a little over a year ago at actually a gay men's event. And she was the photographer and she absolutely knocked it out of the park. And so I hired her for a photo shoot here in Boulder, Colorado. And we're doing some work together with erotic blueprints and all of that. And it's been really fun, Erin, to actually hear your journey and a little bit about who you are. And so maybe we could start out the podcast today just by you sharing a little bit about your tagline, be seen as you are, and how you've kind of gotten into that in photography and what does that look like for you to help other people portray exactly who they are and be seen that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's an honor just to be here with both of you. These are like sacred spaces for me, just to be able to have open, honest communication. And that's kind of what I also look forward to in the work that I do, and the people that I connect with. I think there's so many spaces where we have so many filters that are either put on by ourselves or the people around us or kind of what we've known. And so much of my work in the world is to take those off and say, who are we really? And to help us remember really who we are without all of that extra stuff. So the tagline or my brand, be seen as you are, literally is that. And I take it very seriously, where when I'm working with people, it's kind of like a magical space where I get to fall in love with them for a minute, or for a few minutes, and really just dig into who we are as humans, how we want to be seen, because sometimes that's pretty different than how the rest of the world sees us. I know, like, even our parents think they know us, growing up, and I'm saying that as a parent, where my kids have also shown themselves to me in different ways that I wasn't aware of. And I've kind of made the choice to step through that in a way that is loving and supportive, and just kind of in a state of wonder, and growth and learning, about what that is, and understanding too that it's a journey for them, in the same way that as a human I'm walking through a different journey, that I have to explore as well. So that's a little bit of vagueness about the space that I exist in, but gives you an idea.
Well, you are truly an expert at seeing others as they are. I remember our first interaction. I was sitting at a Mexican restaurant grabbing lunch, and you came up to me and you were like, there's something different about you. I want to get to know you. And you saw me truly as I was in that space. And so it felt really good, as I had just recently come out. This was my first gay men's event in public, and I felt super seen by you and actually cared for in that space. And it was just such a great reminder of there's really great people in this world, and you do such a great job at just seeing who people are and where they're at in the space and just meeting them there. So I just want to say thank you. Such deep alignment with who you are and how you interact with people in this world. Your kids are so lucky to have you as a parent. Absolutely.
I don't know if they would say that every day, but
well, they can come talk to me, and I'll let them know how awesome you are.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about your kids and kind of raising them in a queer space, a trans-friendly space. As a parent, that's got to be really difficult in this world, but also I see you do it in such a different way that is so just genuine and authentic and deep compassion and care. And so I'd love for you to share with our listeners just a little bit about your journey with your kids and their journey in this space of LGBTQ, and what does that look like for you as a parent?
Right. Well, so it's pretty complex. I think when I decided to become a parent, I had no understanding of the queer space, other than there were people out there in the world like that. And so there's been a huge learning curve for me. And there's so many different directions that all of this journey has taken. So I have 3 kiddos. At this point, one identifies as a trans girl, one is non-binary, and I believe pansexual. And my youngest is cis and straight. And so and I'm kind of using that language a little bit in an overlapped way, knowing that identity and sexuality are 2 separate things. So that was something for me to learn. So maybe I'll take the piece just of identity and walk through that part. So my first experience was when my 8-year-old, my middle kiddo, came out as trans. She said, "Mom, I'm a girl." And there was something in that moment that made me listen more carefully. And because some of the things growing up, there were some inconsistencies that I couldn't understand and that I was just curious about. She had some sensory issues. She had some just different ways of being in the world that, as a mom, you have little kids, they like to put different clothes on. They like to, I remember she used to, and I didn't know this until kind of we were walking through her transition, but she used to dress up, and at that time was assigned male. But she used to dress up with a scarf around her head all the time, like a long one out the back. And I always thought, oh, it's just like a fun little accessory. But later on, kind of recognized she really wanted long hair. And so that was her adaptation to being in a space that she didn't have that, because I always would give her a haircut. Oh, your hair is getting long. Let's cut it. Not really understanding that maybe she wanted it a little bit longer. Again, so there's those little things I kind of go back to, like, oh, I wish I would have known. But then I try to give myself grace in that too and say, I know now and I can adjust, right? As an adult, I think as a parent, that's something that's really been important, is just to stay in a state of wonder and recognize that it's not really about me, that it's about her and her growth. I can have growth in my own way as a parent, and that's my job. She doesn't have to explain it, but as she walks her journey, she can kind of share what pieces she's come to discover as well. So now she's 17. So she came out at 8. 17, we've had a huge process in between there, learning and growing, and just, man, the conversations. There's a lot of things we've had to talk through, because these are big decisions. This isn't a decision she made by herself, or I made for her, or her dad made for her. It's been just carefully, I don't know the exact words to say. It's just been a journey. And what I can say at this point is that I get to witness the beauty in it. And her just truly as herself and really fitting into the norm of what she feels is good. And again, at 17, there's a whole lot of life beyond this moment. So I don't know what all that will look like, but I'm here for it. So, yeah. So, and then my oldest, who is non-binary, let me know probably when they were, I'm trying to remember. Sometimes all the ages blur together. And since there's 2 of them that have had different feelings about this and different identities, I think they were probably about 17 when they let me know. So they use they, them, they use she, her, they use he, him. Right now, all the pronouns. We've kind of tried on a whole bunch of them. That's something that I think about as a parent. We've had real success just trying things on. If they fit, then they stick. If they don't fit, then they don't stick. That's something too we talk about, we talk about kind of in these communities, insistency, persistency, and consistency. In terms of my kids, if they didn't have all three of those at varying times, that would tell me something different. And I could support them in a different way. But because they have had all three of these things consistently, um, or in this experience, uh, it has really provided just a little bit more direction in the path that we've taken altogether. So, and again, like I said, my 14-year-old is cisgender and aligns that way and fully supports his siblings in their journeys as well. And they are like his biggest fan too. So it's really been beautiful to see kind of what that interaction has all been like.
That is such a beautiful story. I love hearing that just from a different side of things here too. I know for a lot of trans people, we often look back and think like, oh, I knew from such a young age, but we come out much, much later a lot of the time. So hearing how your kids are able to experience that from young ages, I think a lot of the sort of transphobic language is often around like, oh, kids don't know what they want, and or the idea that something's being forced on them. They're woke teachers or something like that. I even got that from my family. It's like, who are you hanging around with that might have made this happen? And I'm just thinking like, did you not spend all of my childhood with me? Like,
I
you
know it.
should be
I
the
know
least
it.
surprised of anybody.
Right.
So I know that side of things can come up, the idea of kids don't know what they want, but at the same time, like, so I love that insistency, persistency, consistency, because it's so important. I mean, I know, especially as a parent, that there's so much other wonderful things about your kids that have nothing to do with identity
Yep.
and sexuality.
Yep.
But for those of us that have to be in one box that we don't fit in, it can be just a lot of little miserables like throughout our lives. And I think something else that's important about what you said too is keeping this kind of looseness around it, because what you don't want to do is, okay, my assigned male at birth child now identifies as female, so now let's put them in this box, so now hair always has to be long, like just the
Right.
opposite, because
Right.
that's a different level of restriction. You'd want them to be able to be like, if it did happen a few years later, they're like, what, actually I feel a little bit more in this space. It
Yep.
can be a really beautiful thing, and having some fluidity there. But
Yeah.
that's just so interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think one of the benefits of the experience that I'm in as a parent is seeing how different the experience is between one kid and another. Right.
Right.
So having someone who completely identifies within that box, that other box, and then another kid who is super fluid, and the expression is one thing, and then the identity is another, and then it's kind of malleable. And being able to go, sure. Right? Yeah.
I love what you said about what they're after on their head as well, because I was just thinking, I just had a baseball cap the other day for an event at work, and I was like, oh my gosh, I went through a whole phase where I wore those all the time, because I didn't have quite the bravery yet to cut my hair short, but I would put it up in a ponytail, so you basically didn't see any of it, and then I would put the cap over it. So it was like my little way of feeling like I had short hair before I ever had short hair. So I can definitely relate to that little step there. But those tiny things can be this. I mean, that's why we call it euphoria, because it's like, oh, this is, other people get to feel this all the time. Like when it clicks,
Right.
when it clicks into place, it's a beautiful thing. So I love that you're creating that very kind of like fertile ground for them to kind of grow in.
Trying to. Well, that's kind of where I was talking about trying it on.
Yeah.
Right. Like just having a whole toolbox of possibilities, and just saying, go for it. Yeah. And supporting that way. I think you talked about, what was the term you just said? It made me think about an analogy about little tiny paper cuts and how
Oh yeah, I think I said a lot of little miserables.
yes, little miserables. I haven't heard that. And I like that little
Came to me.
as well.
That's what it feels like.
Right. And as a parent, I could see that happening to my kiddo. And when those little paper cuts started to heal a little bit, like they're still there and they still happen for sure. And that's kind of like some trans noise. That's another term that I've become aware of. It's present and I can't take that away. But I can alleviate some of it as a parent and in the spaces that we're in. I remember when my middle kiddo first started her social transition, started expressing a little more female. And we were at an art gallery, and there was someone helping create some art. And they really wanted to say, "Oh, is this your daughter or is this your son?" Like they really were absolutely confused. And I could feel my kid just like squish down the chair and slide under the table.
Mm.
Just that, like I feel it in my gut still. And I'm sure it wasn't like a thing. She was very aware. She was obviously aware of what was going on. But it was this experience that someone else had to be the one to identify her. It couldn't just be like, "What are you creating?" It was like, "Oh, is this your daughter or your son? And how do I address them?"
Mm-hmm.
Versus like just a kid. There's a kid. There's a human in front of you. Let's talk about what they're creating versus like who they are. I think sometimes that's something to keep in mind too, as we're in the world and in spaces with all kinds of humans. Just being aware of the labels that we put on each other and the necessity for ourselves. Like we don't have to do that for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them be and be able to appreciate who they are. I
Yeah.
don't know. That was a sidetrack.
No, I think that's very relevant. Just what this desire to put people into boxes, it's like I'd put myself in a tiny box. So what tiny box can I put you in? Then I could kind of judge everything else around you.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's funny when we hear, stereotypically from the right, this idea of like, oh, I don't pronouns. I don't, what's all this stuff about pronouns? It's like, well, if someone misused yours, you would notice right away and you would not like how it feels. Like, it's just a
Yeah.
linguistics thing. Everybody has pronouns. But I also think it's good to remember, of course, that for some people, not having to have a label is that freedom.
Yeah.
Because of course it's great to break away from a label you don't identify with, but for other queer people it can be lovely to be like, yes, this word finally fits. I really like this. This is where I feel like I have a safe space. So to each their own, right?
Right. Well, and I think the experience is so different for everybody
Mm-hmm.
within every community. One of my very dear trans friends is he spoke to the fact that he's like, I don't actually really like to put my pronouns right out there. Because for that split second, because he passes at this point, he's like, for that split second, they don't need to know that I'm trans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, right, just understanding that the experience can be really vast.
Yeah.
Is also really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there can be kind of a phase sometimes for queer people where it's like we've been in the closet for so long and we finally identify or understand ourselves better, and now we want to shout it from the rooftops because we're not ashamed anymore. And then there's kind of this like leveling out of like, okay, but like I have a day job, like there are other things that matter about my identity that I'm not. It's not just like trans is number one and then everything else follows under that. So yeah, it definitely there could be a bit of a progression there too.
Yeah.
One thing you had mentioned in your notes here was the idea of having a partner that can come out after many years of marriage. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. That's another part of the layer of my life experience. I was married for 22 years to an amazing human who has also been, it's the kid's dad and one of my very favorite people in the world. We are splitting very amicably. He was able to let me know that he was queer after, we're both 46. So at about 42, 3, shared that with me. And so that's been a process too. So, man, talk about experiences in the queer community already. Like I'm a huge ally as a parent. It's a little more complicated when your partner lets you know that. So there's there's been a mixture of grief and celebration, and really, I'm a pretty strong advocate and ally in this world, in this bubble, and so that part's pretty locked in. But it's a process. So I'm still in it.
Do you have any advice for people that,
Yeah.
in order to kind of be an opening
Man,
space for people finding themselves? Because that's a big thing. That's no
It
small
is.
thing to have someone. So it of course speaks so well of you that they felt safe sharing that with you. But I would imagine there are a lot of emotions with that as well, and not taking it personally, but being like, this is their journey.
Yeah, yeah. Honored that they shared it with me. Also hurt by the fact that like it took that long. And that's about me, right?
Mm.
I've had to recognize that that's something. Yeah, I've had to piece that apart a little bit. Um, Advice, gosh, again, like parenting, every situation's a little bit different, but going back to that state of wonder,
Mm.
he's got a big journey ahead of him. I've got a big journey ahead of me. This puts me out in the world in a way that is different as well. So,
Yeah, that's something else you had in your notes too, is this idea of life is big and beautiful, but this is kind of starting in this whole new phase. So starting a new chapter at say 46, it's like you said in your notes. What do I do now? Who am I in the world? That type of
right?
thing. The
Yeah,
big
yeah.
questions that don't ever really go away, do they?
They don't. They don't. And I think they come to us whether we're in this situation or not.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of shifted it, right? In my mind, I had a little bit of like a direction and a path and expectations surrounding what my relationship and my life looked like. And now the world is, like I said, big and beautiful. And um, I'm like in a space of exploration and figuring out what it is that I actually want. And I think
Mm.
that's in part, or that's come into play a little bit in my conversations with you, Ace, where it's like the possibilities are out there. And where do I go with that? How do I explore that? And do I want to talk about that, think about that on my own, or are there communities that can say, hey, here's some possibilities, try it out, this is safe, this is not, this is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's saying goodbye to those social constructs that we all follow and just saying, you know what, I'm going to follow my pleasure, follow my curiosity, follow what falls in alignment with me, what's genuinely coming up. Which is why I feel it such deep in alignment with you, because I think throughout the past 20, 30 years of your life, you've kind of explored that. You've kind of like dipped a toe in and you've changed your thought process. You've changed what you've believed. You've kind of rework the way that you live your lifestyle according to kind of what's coming up around you. And I think
Mhm.
that's really interesting. I would love actually for you to speak into a little bit about what does it look like to change your perspective in life and actually, you know, become an ally. Or were you always an ally? Like did you feel that way your entire life, or was that something that shifted throughout your life experience with your past husband and then your kiddos? Like, what has that journey really looked like for you?
Yeah, yeah, I think growing up I was a pastor's kid. I guess I still am a pastor's kid. And there's layers to that, with a little bit of religion twisted in there, I guess. That has evolved and that has shaped a little bit of who I am, and my life experience and what expectations are surrounding relationships, surrounding, oh, how do we move in the world? The one thing that I do hold on to from that piece of my life is deep love for your neighbor. So I think that is the biggest gift that I've taken from religion and faith. There's a lot that I've set down, and let just kind of go out the door because I don't like lots of it. um, because sometimes that piece doesn't allow for actually for allyship, um, and there can be a lot of judgment and in certain communities. But I think how has let's see the question, how has my allyship evolved? I want to say I've always been a pretty open person, and the fact that I love humans is like my driving force. The allyship has expanded because I want to help be a voice for my kids. Um, so that I remember I went through a point when my middle kiddo was first coming out, and we were part of the church. Their dad is also a pastor. And again, layers. So we actually came out as a family when our kiddo did. And when she changed her name, we did a name blessing at the church. And there was some support, actually quite a bit of support. But there's also, I remember there was a woman that talked to me afterwards, and she just looks at me and she said, "You're doing the wrong thing." And I looked at her and I went, "You know what? I don't know if I am or if I'm not, but I love my kid. Come talk to me in a couple of years." And it was for me, it was like, I remember the shakiness in my voice, and when your stomach is just up in your throat and you're kind of like, why do I have to defend this part of life? That oh, it was a tough space, and my body felt it all, and I tried to take it all on as a parent, and that wasn't healthy either. So finding support through allyship was really huge. I connected with an organization called Trans Family here in Seattle, and really plugged into a group of parents that were walking through similar things, and everyone's kind of on a different part of the journey. Before that, I felt pretty alone because I didn't know very much. I remember just like being a sponge, trying to be a sponge and gathering information from here and there, and like, what do I believe? What do I not believe? What's true? What's not? What's safe for my kid? And I remember that was really helpful, kind of walking through once we were into social transition, then physical transitions. What does that look like? Oh my gosh, this is my baby, right? How do I help provide what she needs in an educated way based on what doctors already know and have studied for a while. That growth is exponential as well, right? And ever changing. And so much of that space, we do our best and make the best decisions and adjust. I think so. Really finding that support from other parents and other people kind of walking the same thing. I think connecting with more trans people of all ages really opened my awareness and sensitivity. Ace, I remember that taco shop, and I remember feeling like there's something like I just love you because I love my kid too. And I know that as human to human, we need that. But for me, as a person who's aware of the trans experience, as much of that I can toss out into the world, I want to do, just to reinforce like how important that experience is. So
yeah, I think that's so beautiful in your story of even when someone's saying something so awful to you, that your response is still, I don't know. Like, I'm still just kind of trying to do my best here. And I think that's so important and very much contrasting to what a lot of us experience growing up in the church. I'm also a pastor's kid, so hey, that's an interesting experience. And I think for me, what so much of this comes down to is this idea of uncertainty. And especially growing up in the church, and just with how my brain works, I wish I knew exactly what I had to do all the time. And I want someone to give me a checklist. It's funny because my fiance's ADHD and she hates checklists. So it's good. It kind of like humbles me to see how other brains work on this. But like growing up in the church, it's like you feel like all the answers are out there. And if you don't know it, someone that knows the book more is going to know it, whatever it may be. And so that structure and that rule following and having a plan. And so similar to like we're talking about, I feel like the article title is always like starting over at 40 or whatever it might be. It's like, that's just another box. It's just another box of like, women at this age group should be thinking about these things, doing these things. It's in this little box, and it can be kind of overwhelming when that's all open. But yeah, I think that's so important. As much as we like structure, the world is full of so much uncertainty. We want something to hold on to. It's kind of a facade in a way. Like, we don't know what's going to happen, and we can't like give up hope or be totally overwhelmed. But I think there is such a humility in admitting that you don't know. And so I think that is hard when you're raised religious, and there's this kind of arrogance from a lot of religious people of just like, we have all the answers. We were, because I'm sure my parents would say that like, oh, we absolutely did raise them correctly, and if something else went terribly wrong, but it's right for us to not be loving and supportive and all those different things, just because they've got their interpretation of the rule book. And so I love that in your story, when it seems so clear to us that you're being the perfect, wonderful parent, you're still saying like, I don't know, but I'm going to keep loving my kid and doing my best. I think that's the best thing we can do, is just admit that we don't have the answers, and to use your own words, stay in a state of wonder. I think that all kind of ties around to these boxes are the sort of artificial comfort. And I think sometimes, like, I'm very fortunate to get to spend a lot of time in queer spaces now. There's just a certain level of like, like we're all just being, instead of, I feel like if I were to imagine like a very straight space in my mind and stereotyping, it would be like, oh, they're wearing all of these masks, and there are all these different characters that they're playing. I wonder what they're actually like. And so I think sometimes, like, when I meet other queer people, it's like we get deeper way faster, and it's so much more just right down to it. And so people I've only known a couple of months, it's like we still like we love each other, and there's this realness to it. It's so beautiful, but you have to have gone through a lot of work usually to get to that point. So I know I'm going in a lot of different directions, but I just think that it's interesting. A lot of this kind of ties around to the idea of, how do we box ourselves in? How do we try to box other people in, just to try to tell ourselves that we have it all figured out? And how beautiful life can be when we admit that we don't, but it can be really scary. I feel like I'm in a part of my life where I'm leaving behind a lot of things that weren't serving me, and now there is just this open horizon, and it's kind of terrifying. It's very exciting, and I'm so grateful for it. But there is, like, I just think of like, maybe I do miss that old job where I was miserable, because at least I knew what was going to happen every day, and now it's like anything is possible. It's a very, very different thing. Your whole kind of foundation is different. So that idea of, to tie it back around, the importance of staying curious, and not just kind of going, like I was saying earlier, from one box to another box. Like, okay, my kid is trans, now let's look up all those surgeries and figure that out right away. You don't want to then rush in a different direction, but to learn and find people to connect with, and good community, and stay curious. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful perspective you got.
Absolutely. Well, a couple things that are popping up just as you're speaking. The first one is my experience at Pride. I've shot Pride in a couple of different places before, and I remember the first time I experienced it, the word you used earlier was euphoric. It is brilliant. It is. Can I cuss on here? That's okay? Okay. It is fucking brilliant. And it is so euphoric for everyone. It is those characters that you were talking about, even in straight spaces, even in Pride, it's like the expanse of characters. It's really just like, I'm going to try it all. I'm going to try what fits. I'm going to try everything around here, and everybody's doing it. And so then you talk about like a different level of intimacy and conversations. You get rid of the bullshit and like the small talk, and you just go, oh, do you like that strap? Sweet. Why do you like it? Right?
Yeah.
This is like buttoning this, and this, and talking about the weather, right? It's just a totally different space.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about your photography then? Because I know we've talked about so many other things, but in terms of what you actually do, is you really help capture people.
Yeah. So one of the things that I had a friend describe the experience as disarming.
Ooh.
I really like that word because, again, it's like we're so protected. We have so many shields. We have so many filters, and we don't even know that we have them until they come off. And once they do, it's kind of like, it's very vulnerable. I've had people, there was a group of people that I had shot all of them individually, and they said, did Erin make you cry? Did Erin make you cry? Did you cry? And I overheard this, and I'm like, oh crap, they're thinking that I'm making them cry. But what's happening in those moments is that, again, we go back to that word disarming. We take those things off, and guess what? It's pretty tender in there. And what I try to do is just hold space for that. And I don't take it on as mine, but I'm able to be present for it and allow it to just breathe a little bit. And I think in that process, the experience of photographing with me is it literally, I think, is an experience versus like a product.
Yeah.
Yes, you get some beautiful pictures. You get the memory of being in that moment, but the memory kind of combined with the understanding of yourself, and remembering who you are. I said that earlier. It's this process of remembering who you are, and it's not just the beautiful parts,
I
right?
love that.
Because it's the tender and the sometimes painful parts that also we know make us who we are, and bring us forth in the world a little bit. And so it's taking that and going, okay, now what? Where do I want to go? So there's some conversation in the photo sessions. I don't even like calling them that. What should I call them? The experience,
Yeah.
the overlapping of life, that happens. So, yeah, it's literally my favorite thing to do.
Well, and you do a fantastic job at it. As a client, I've had a lot of photographers just because of my role and what I do, and as a client, I felt incredibly safely held. Like the work that I do is incredibly vulnerable. I encourage my clients to be very raw and real. And in the session with you, it totally transpired where I was really raw and real and vulnerable, and I felt safely held. And I think that's what sets you apart from many other photographers that I've been with. It's that ability to hold space for whatever's arising and just be present with it and breathe into it. And yeah, this is what's going on. And then the pictures that come from that are so genuine.
Yeah.
It really does show exactly who you are to this world. And so I just want to say thank you for the work that you do in allowing people to be fully present and allowing things to arise and just kind of going with the flow with whatever's transpiring in the photo shoot. It really was like a very healing space for me to be in. So thank you for providing that for all of your clients.
Good. Well, it's my honor to be in that. So thank you for trusting me with it too. Right? It's a collaboration. I think in those moments, it is such a collaboration that we create something together. And then that's also
Absolutely.
what moves out into the world too. And I think something like this, like a podcast, just having the conversations that move the needle forwards is so important. Creating the space to not shy from something, but say, "Ooh, I felt that. Now let's talk about it, or let's actually feel into it, or let's breathe." Sometimes that's one thing that I do in my photo shoots that I've learned, and I do it almost every time. It's different with every person, but I'll have them close their eyes, and it's a moment to really just be present with yourself, right? We're taking pictures, right? So you want to have the control of, oh my God, what do I look like? What is my expression? What am I thinking? All these things. But when you close your eyes, there's none of that. There's no visual other than you being with yourself, knowing that someone else is out there, right? So I try to kind of just disappear into that for a minute and be present. But I think that helps us. Maybe that's something too, just to think about as we create these spaces to be out in the world, is just being in our own bodies, right? And breathing through that so that we can be present for each other. Yeah. And be in that state of wonder.
That's amazing. So what's the best way for people to get into contact with you?
Good question. My phone number? No. I have a website. It is beseenasyouare.com. That you can reach out to me that way. I'm on Instagram at beseenasyouare. Facebook, the old people's thing. Couldn't say that.
Cover the bases.
Yeah. You can just use my name, Erin Burk. I also have a Shopify which is kind of cool. A little store where I raise money to photograph queer people all over the place. It's called beautifullyqueer.com. I have shirts and mugs that just help fund me to get to people, and so that I can gift that and create space for what I think are beautifully queer people out in the world. And it's really important. I think representation is huge. I know that as a parent of queer kids, when they can see themselves in normal, everyday spaces, they feel more normal and more accepted and not just tolerated. Affirmation is a really big deal. Being welcome is one thing, but being affirmed is where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of some of my contacts. And yeah, I would also say for other parents that are looking for good resources, transfamily.org is one. That one's based out of Washington. And another one that I work with it's actually a really similar name. Trans Families, SOS, is based out of San Diego. They have resources out the wazoo, parent groups. They have people who help with the medical side of everything. They have experts in that area and really good connections. And I trust them with my kids. And so I would recommend them highly. So
That's fantastic. Yeah. I will link all of those resources down below for everyone. And of course, just let me know later if you think of something a week from now. I can still plug it into the episode.
Anything that you wish we would have asked?
Just maybe more advice for parents. Ask questions. Ask lots of questions. Find the people that you trust and don't be afraid of it. And if you are afraid of it, walk through it. There's a lot of spaces where, like the grandparents, that's another layer, right? The grandparents have had to do their own therapy in regards to my kids. And they recognized that was their work to do. That I wasn't the one that could field all of the questions, right? But they've been able to step into that. And I also encourage that. As parents, your kids don't need to carry your weight. That's a big one. I just talked to a mom of a trans kid, and she said, I just don't get it. And then I'll tell my kid I don't get it. And then I have all these questions for them. And I said, hang on. It's not theirs to answer.
Yeah.
So seek your own help in that way. There's people out there to help. So reach out where you need to. And just love your kids. Man, that's it. That's tough.
That is it. Thank you so much. That is fantastic advice. And like I said, we'll connect all those links down below. Stay curious out there. Thank you so much, Erin, for being here with us today. This was such a lovely conversation. I think it'll be really helpful for folks out there. And we always love getting different perspectives to this whole big, crazy, wonderful life we've got going here. So we will check in with everyone on the next episode of Wholly Unapologetic.